Also, yeah, this idea of national security. Um, the wording, if you take it at face value, national security implies that it secures the state itself, as in the United States, the government. It's securing their interests and not yours. You have to think outside the box and think about it in people terms as opposed to state terms or communal terms. Let's add to the wording here. Nationalism, the idea that we are all one group as opposed to people. We are all people, individuals. The idea of nationalism is terrible. All right, that's my rant on immigration. If you'd like to call in, talk about it, go ahead. Call me. It's cool. While we're talking about nationalism and government, which I always talk about government. Anyway, while we're talking about nationalism, let's talk about communism versus anarchy. I looked up on Wikipedia. There have been people that have been arguing to me that, oh, communism is anarchy. What are you talking about? No, what are you talking about? Communism is the antithesis of anarchy. Communism, the idea, the rationalization that people have, that people advocate communism because they believe that it would be a stateless society where everybody would have the opportunity to have land just by existing. Let's put it that way. Everybody would share the same land. And that's a pretty interesting idea. And I could advocate for it, but only if nobody worked. And I say that because nobody would have the ambition to actually get their own land or make their own way in life. If they already have what they need, why would anybody work? So what would have to happen is machines would have to be doing the work, period. Nobody would be working, most likely, except for, the very, very rich, because there will be very, very rich people. Okay, anyway, let's get back to the logic of it. In communism, if everybody were to share the land, somebody would have to plan who would get the land and how it would be divided up, and who can have children or not. Why? Because the land is there, you're sharing the land, you can't divide it more than the amount of people that you have. So this is why China, for example, says that families can only have 1 or 2 children. I think they're trying to get to two children at this point. Blah, blah. But this is why a state is in existence in communism. To believe that it is anarchy is illogical. It is completely a falsity. In the idea of anarchy, what would happen is there would be, the definition of anarchy is no state, no government. So what would happen? People would be able to freely trade. They would be able to get land, exchange, contract, just they can't take from others. And there are a couple of ideas of anarchy in that in disputes. One idea is that businesses would exist in order to arbitrate, and there would be laws created by these different businesses, arbitrators basically, and the people that are in are disputing would decide on which business to go to settle the dispute. Another idea is that you could have just people in the community, like a group. There would still be groups. It's just the way people are. They would be selected for jury, and everything would be done by the jury, as opposed to having a judge and him directing people what to do. Juries would just decide, because that has existed in the past. And so anyway, so anarchy, you could have people that would decide freely for themselves to combine their powers, if you will, combine their land into one and decide to share it. That's up to them. They can, in true anarchy, they can decide to do it. But what would end up happening is they would become like small villages or something like that, because as these groups expand, things like China happen. You're talking about crazy amounts of land and all of this central planning decided by only a few people. So this is why communism, as it has existed in the past and currently, it is crazy. It is violent because it is so big and there is so much power given to the state, because there would inevitably be a state. Communism is an ideal that cannot happen unless it's small. And this is when, if you think about Indian tribes, they are probably the epitome of communism and anarchy at the same time. Indian tribes were very fair to each other, very family-oriented, very natural, which is the kind of thing that I talk about on this show, is nature, family, trust, love, respect for one another, just the basics, and we've lost all of that. So this is what I want to clear up, is this big idea of communism. It can't work on it, and it won't work on a global scale unless you contort it to be anarchy, and the communist tribes, if you will, only come down to small packages like family and tribes. You know what I mean? It's a very different idea. And so anyway, I guess that's about it. All right. All right, let's go back to this immigration debate, sort of. There's right. So there's a kind of a big divide between conservatives, as they are known now, and libertarianism. And obviously, there's always this divide between the left and the right. Why? Because people don't see the reason to get together. Anyway, let's talk about this. Conservatives, as they are now, believe that they need to have these wars and must promote democracy and all of these other crazy ideas that I just don't get anymore. So there was an article at theatlantic.com. If you go to http://andrewsullivan.theatlantic.com, and there was no www because, yeah, never mind. Anyway, just go there and you can find an article that, well, Andrew Sullivan wrote. He talks, or he quotes C. Bradley Thompson, and I have no idea who this guy is. He has a link to a new book that Thompson wrote, though I didn't go research this book or whatever. I'm sorry.